Welcome to Bring Out Your Badass Self, a movement to break your negative thoughts and habits and instead focus on building each other up and encouraging fearless authenticity.
Each week, we will get vulnerable and share experiences alongside our guests and audience. Come rediscover your inner badass self.
Good morning, badasses.
Morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I am also doing well. I am psyched it's Friday. I'm psyched for BOYBAS.
Yes. I had some people pinging me this morning saying, hey, are you going live this morning? And so they're going to be listening in as they're working. Sorry, we're not helping with productivity for companies, are we?
That's fine. That's fine.
Well, if you have joined us, let us know that you are here. And Cate, I have to tell you, I'm super excited about today because I'm doing the interviewing and listening. And most importantly, I'm about to learn from a master listener today.
Yes, I'm excited too. This is a topic I love. It's been especially helpful for me in my career. To be a good listener, it's a key point. I think it is a key strength that you need to work on in really any leadership position, and then especially in sales and marketing.
Yeah,
Listening
absolutely.
is very key. Consulting also super key. You got to listen to know what you're consulting on, right?
Absolutely.
So definitely say hello and let us know that you're here. If it's your first time, please use a white heart.
Yes.
Let us know that you're here.
Absolutely. And so, Cate, I was going through some of the comments of last week, and I can't remember who said this, but I'm going to start to try to compete with you on the show. And it has to do with the number of drinks that you took in different containers. They said they counted 4 different containers. So today I have my coffee in my badass mug.
Okay.
I have my water in my Deltec container. And then I have my orange juice and apple in my Full Sail cup.
I only have 2 this morning, but that's low for me. You guys are all correct. I am quite the consumer of liquids. That's hilarious.
I don't know who said that, but they were like, I counted, I think, 4 different containers.
Okay, well, do you guys? Okay, so I have a water bottle that I dress up. It is a well-dressed water bottle sitting right on my desk because I drink about a gallon of water a day. I always have. I love water. Hot water for tea, cold water, room temperature water, any type of water, bubbly water. I love water.
All right. Well, we got some people joining us. Welcome, Bruce. He said, hey, badasses listening at work. So we're not helping with productivity, but maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's helping to be more productive because you're listening to other people and getting stuff done at the same time. And then we also have Renee joining us. Good morning, my 2 favorite badasses. I'm only able to be on for a few today, but look forward to listening over the weekend. So we're so glad you stopped in, Renee.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I also want to just mention that we are slowly bringing those lurkers to the surface. So we had someone that last week that had joined us. I think it was Debbie. I'm hoping maybe she joins us again today. And so we love our lurkers and those also that watch afterwards because we get a lot of comments from people afterwards. But we also especially love those that interact with us. And so Leslie has joined us. Good morning, beauties. Oh, that's so sweet.
Good morning. Thank you, Leslie.
And then Stephanie, hello.
Yes, I can hear her saying it. That's how she says it too. Hello. Good morning, Steph.
Yeah. And so I also want to just remind people that for those that are coming in through Facebook or LinkedIn, and I noticed last week when I re-listened, there was someone coming in from LinkedIn that we didn't know, and I said Facebook because I'm so used to it being Facebook. But it's
Yeah.
StreamYard.com/Facebook, and I think it's the same for LinkedIn, StreamYard.com/LinkedIn, so we can see you.
Yes, please. It's good to see your name, especially if you're going to comment, so we can talk to you. I think, is there a same process for YouTube?
I think
There may
so.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that we have as many live viewers on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we really push things on LinkedIn and on Facebook for the most part. But I did notice we got 12, we have 12 people on YouTube. So, woohoo!
Okay. Yeah.
And so, but we haven't
Yeah.
really pushed there, but it's just more
No.
out there just for ease. So,
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
So, Cate, anything else happening this weekend that you have going on, or anything fun, anything new this week?
So this weekend we are celebrating Father's Day with my dad. So tomorrow we're going to the supper club.
Yeah.
It's in Wisconsin Dells. It's a fancy supper club. It's so much fun. It's just beautiful. Maybe I'll take some pictures for those of you that are not in Wisconsin and are not used to the supper club scene.
Yeah.
They're so fun. So I could post some pictures.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
So Leslie asked for we need a Simon update. I don't know
I
what.
think she might need Oscar.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes, yeah, no problem. I love the name Simon too. Although Jenna is not. I don't know. She doesn't like S names that much. But Oscar, if that's who you're talking about, Leslie, he is doing fantastic. So he got his job, his dream job. He interviewed and signed the offer letter already.
Nice.
So he's super excited about that. And he is in his apartment. And it ended up being a lot less kind of scary than I thought it would be, just leaving him there. Leslie,
Sorry.
Oh, it's so sweet of you. Don't worry about it
Yeah.
all. At all. I am the least offended person in usually in general. So
Absolutely.
don't worry about it.
Carrie said,
yes,
the old fashioned for me.
Yes, Carrie. That is it. That is it. I will have a bourbon. I can't do brandy. Too sweet. But that is totally Wisconsin. Brandy, old fashions win over bourbon old fashions any day.
Yeah.
But yeah, Oscar's doing great. Thank you so much for asking. He's actually been really into cooking, so he sends his mom's cooking videos of himself cooking very funny things that he is quite pleased with himself about, so he really bought so grocery shopping was really fun because he bought the most hilarious things that an 18-year-old would buy. So for instance, he bought 96 Pop-Tarts. Because we don't have a lot of Pop-Tarts. We're not into Pop-Tarts here, but he loves them. So he was like, this is it. This is my chance to get as many Pop-Tarts as I want. So he got 96 Pop-Tarts. He got a lot of cheese, but he then got spices and flour and sugar. And he was like, I want to cook. And so he's been trying different things and sending us videos, and it's just adorable. We've been really enjoying it. So
that's awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I would love to see what it is that he fixes. And so anything specific other than
so the first video
girl Pop-Tarts is and bulk is her jam. So
they're so good. I have a theory about Pop-Tarts. They're so filling. I think that they actually reform into their original shape in your stomach, because when you eat a Pop-Tart, it is so filling. And I think it just like they just come back together and they're like, we're here to stay and fill your stomach up. So the first thing he made was he wanted to fry cheese curds, but he didn't have any cheese curds because he bought a copious amount of shredded cheese. So what he did was he made a batter with egg and flour and milk, and then he squeezed the shredded cheese up into little balls, and he battered it, and then he fried it. And so then he was eating it, and he said, "I swear, Mom, it doesn't look good, but it tastes really good." And at the end of the video, he said, "I am so pleased with myself." And then the next video was orange juice and ice in a blender. And he was like, "Look, I made orange slushies." And again, at the end, he said, "I'm so happy with myself." So I got such a huge kick out of these. Oh, it's great.
It's the small things in life that
I
make us
know.
happy.
I know. Like that's what I would love. And he's been creating music. He wrote some poems, and he's been rapping with like finding beats on YouTube. So he's having a blast, and he's sharing it with us, and it's just all awesome. We're like really enjoying it. So thank you.
So Leslie said, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Pop-Tarts are good enough for breakfast? Question mark? Then they are perfectly fine for dinner.
They're so good, right?
That's her Pop-Tart theory.
Yep. Yeah, if breakfast is the most important meal of the day, then pretty much anything for breakfast is good for dinner, right?
What did you say, Kate? Oh, just kidding.
I said, oh.
This is why I need to hear from you today. And so I was just joking to sort of lead into today's topic. So I'm so excited to get to interview my badass co-host today for the art of active listening. And so Cate is a relationship manager at Full Sail Partners. And prior to that, she was a cold caller extraordinaire and also chief badass at her own company. And today she is going to share her insights and practical tips for becoming a better listener. And I have to say that I'm excited about this topic because I think I'm a okay listener. But I think Cate is an amazing listener, and it really has to do with also things that she picks up as well, and really even through written things as well. So today we're going to dig into how active listening has impacted her career. And so welcome, Cate, to the show for the very first time.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here, Sarah.
Yes. So no, I'm super glad to be able to have someone in my life that is an amazing listener, and you pick up on a lot of things in work. And I just always appreciate the things that you pick up that sometimes maybe might be missed in a conversation. And so today we're going to be talking about that.
Well, I'm super psyched. Like I said, listening is has been a key component for me in my sales career and consulting career. So.
Yeah. Well, Cate, the first question I have for you is, what is active listening?
Active listening is truly engaging, right? So hearing what someone is telling you in order to understand versus in order to respond, right? So active listening in contrast to passive listening, right? So passive listening is like, I think it's the listening that a lot of us do in our day-to-day, right? Maybe you're like multitasking, or you're listening to music while you're working, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's passive listening. So active listening, opposite of passive listening, like really being there for it.
Yeah. And so active listening would be really putting all of the things aside that we have going on. And so it would be me not having all of the comments and looking at those, but really being able to focus in on those things, or as you're at work, listening sometimes to to two different things, like you're having a chat conversation and then you're also trying to listen to a client. So it's really being in the moment is what I'm hearing.
Right. Yep. Yeah. It's a lot of mindfulness. I often also call it, especially when I was training new business development people or inside sales people,
Mm-hmm.
I often call it curious listening,
Mm.
because if you come to the table or come to the conversation curious about the people that you're engaging with, um, that leads to activity, right? Because you're curious, you want to know, you want to hear, you want to really understand, and you're focused, right,
Yeah.
on what you're hearing, what words are being used, the spirit of the statement, beyond just the conversation. You actually want to understand when you're
Mm.
curious, right?
I like that. I like the word curious, because
Yes.
when you think about that, you are also not judging one way or the other. You
Right.
are just seeking to understand what it is that they're saying.
Exactly. And the no judging is key too, because to be a really great active listener, you can't start coming up with a counter statement, or to you can't focus on what you're going to say next, right?
Mm.
So you have to kind of set aside your judgment in order to understand perspective,
Yeah.
right? So you have to be like, okay, if I know my own perspective. I don't have to think of it right now. It'll still be there when I'm done hearing what this person has to say. My
Yeah.
brain will still work. So I just need to focus on what's being said so I can understand the perspective of the person that I'm listening to right
All right, perfect. So I think for me, that really gives a good understanding of what active listening is. Maybe if we could
now.
talk a little bit about what active listening isn't, and maybe even give some examples to that.
Yeah, definitely. So, so I already mentioned passive listening. So, passive listening versus active listening. Passive, is typically the more like, you're multitasking, or you're intentionally listening to something while you're doing something else. You're passively listening to a podcast while you're driving, or an audiobook, right? You're able to do those two things at once. When I write, I like to listen to music. Even though I'm very focused
Mhm.
on the writing, I like to hear music, um, and I'm passively listening to that music. Um, then there's listening that is just disengaged listening, right? Like where, and we've all experienced it. From time to time, and I'm super guilty of it too, especially in my personal life, where
Mm.
I don't get to hyper focus. Like at work, I get to hyper focus. I'm allowed to. It's encouraged. It's really important, right? But in
Yeah.
my personal life, when I have, um, you know, multiple things happening at one time, it's often a little harder to fully engage. So most of the time, I believe that people are either, they're truly trying to listen, or they think they're listening,
Mhm.
but they're just not being mindful. They're preoccupied with whatever is going on,
Yeah.
and it's super hard in that moment for them to set that aside. So the ability to focus and the desire to focus have to be there. So, like, I guess what I would tell yourself is, if you were in a situation where you can just tell that someone's like totally checked out,
Mhm.
they're unable to focus, or they don't want to focus. It's one of two things, right? They're unable
Mm.
to, or they don't want to. And it may serve you to kind of to just to stop communicating, or to check in, or see if it makes sense to continue the conversation. So So disengaged listening really feels like it's not hitting the mark, right? When you're in that conversation.
Yeah, and one of the things that I have found is that whenever I do interviews, for example, I have a list of questions, but I allow space in the middle to ask questions that I wasn't planning on asking or I didn't plan on asking, because that's when I find that I'm really engaged because I'm listening to the person. And so, like, for example, I just asked you like 4 questions I had not planned on asking. And so to
Right.
me, that is active listening. And I think even in our jobs, as you are working with people that are doing lead gen, you have a list of questions. And so someone that has an agenda, they're like, okay, here's my question. All right, here's my question. All right, here's my question. But they're not actually listening to the things that they might have missed. And this is one of the things that we do, a part of the interview process as well, is to see how well that person actually takes a moment to listen to what the person's saying. So they interview me and we see, does this person ask additional questions based on some of the things that I say? Because that's
Yeah.
where it's super important, is you have your list of questions, but it's the other things that the person's saying that becomes even more important in some ways. And sometimes I've thrown my questions away because I'm like, oh wow, we're going down a fascinating,
Right.
trail. And so that has really helped me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's I think in the workplace, preparing and having a list of questions is helpful. But you're right, the ability to just follow the conversation and really dig in.
Mhm.
I often refer to that as probing, even though
Mhm.
that's a weird word when you think about it a lot of ways. But to really
Kate, I'm gonna probe you.
understand. Yes, exactly. Let me probe now. I'll put it into into a script. Probe now, please. But you know, you have to kind of dig in and figure out, if someone says, well, I am having a problem with this and I'm looking for a solution, you have to really ensure that you understand that problem.
Yeah.
Like, I can tell you, I have a problem listening. That could mean a variety of things, right? Maybe I'm hard of hearing. Maybe I
Yeah.
have attention issues.
Mhm.
Maybe I don't care. Maybe I think I'm smarter than everyone and I don't need to listen.
Yeah.
There's a variety of reasons what that can mean. And if I came to you and said, oh, you have a problem listening, here are some hearing aids, I've solved your problem, right? I didn't probe. I didn't figure out,
Yeah.
what is going on. What is really behind your problem,
Yeah.
right? So,
Absolutely.
and too often we make assumptions. And I see this a lot in my personal life too.
Yes. I see this. So when I first started out as a consultant, a lot of times the assumption as a consultant is, this person has a problem, I've solved it. All right, the next person comes about and it's like, oh, same problem as the previous person, so I'm going to assume that this is the solution. And I quickly learned, I'm like, oh, I can't do that. Like, a real consultant will sit back and put those assumptions aside. It may end up being exactly like the other person, but if you don't probe enough, which is really active listening and understanding the situation, you could potentially provide a solution has nothing to do with what it is that's going on with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a terrific point, and I'm glad you were able to learn that, because I think sometimes consultants or experts get kind of stuck in their favorite way of solving a problem, and then that
Yeah.
leads to a misconception. That anytime I hear just a hint of that problem, oh, I've got the solution because it's my favorite solution. It works so well. I've helped so many people with the solution.
Yeah.
Let me show it to you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes clients will also lead you down that path too. They're like, I can't believe you haven't ever had to solve this problem. Like, why are we going through? And I'm just like, well, I don't want to make assumptions that your situation is exactly like someone else. Yes, we've solved this type of problem, and I've actually solved it in different kinds of ways. And so
Right.
sometimes as a client, we also will get tunnel vision as well and think, come on, like, don't you already have a solution for this?
Yeah, exactly. That sentiment of, I can't be unique. This has to be solvable. You should, as the expert, like, know how to solve this, pretty instantly, right? If I'm,
Yeah.
you know, you,
Hmm.
so I can see that from the client perspective,
Yeah.
as well. But um, I think that's an interesting thing that we could potentially coach consultants to do, is to explain their process a little bit
Yeah.
as they're doing it, right? So,
Mm.
I need to understand this in your language, in your world, in your processes, rather than what I saw 2 hours ago in somebody else's world.
Yeah.
And maybe the same issue on paper.
Right.
We have a problem with billing,
Right.
but let's understand it from the position of where you sit in this
Exactly.
space.
Yeah, I'm going to
Yeah.
pull up Stephanie's comment. So she said, we listen to respond rather than understand. And if you already said this, ironically, I was answering an email. So I was just passive listening. So Stephanie is a really good listener as well in
She
what
is.
she does. And I just loved working with her. Back we're starting to work with her again, but we worked with her, and she was one of the people that I just loved because I was like, oh, she gets it. She is listening to what the client is saying, and she's not just going, okay, here's my prescribed thing that I'm supposed to tell you. I'm supposed to sell you. I'm supposed to sell you. And she was like, no, I need to listen to what the client is
Mm-hmm.
saying. And she would come back to us and say, okay, how do you want us to handle this? So she also listened to us on our perspective and how it is we wanted things handled for the client that we jointly work with. And so
Yeah,
Stephanie is a great listener as well.
she is.
Hmm.
She is. And she wants to hear the good and the bad, right? So when
Hmm.
she's interacting with customers, she looks for feedback and all experiences. She doesn't want to just hear only the good things. She wants to know all of it so that she can truly help. She's such a good nurturer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that that's a huge word as well, as nurturer,
Right.
in what it is that you do. That if you approach things, and that's one of the reasons for whenever I first started thinking about selling, as an example, I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I'm not a salesperson. Like because I had in my mind that a salesperson was like the car salesman, like, hey, don't you want this,
Yep.
lovely piece of software? And so I'm like, I'm not a salesperson. And so my mentor, Kevin O'Connor, said to me, Sarah, like every day you're selling. And I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
please explain. And he said, when a client comes to you with a challenge, he's like, what do you do? I'm like, well, I'm trying to figure out how it is that I can help to solve the issue. And he's like, that's selling. He's like,
Right.
selling is simply understanding what the challenge is and how is it that you're going to help the client. And for
Right.
me, that was a complete turnaround of, oh, okay, well, if that's all I'm doing, and that's also, I think, why I ended up becoming good at sales, is because I also would tell people, you're not a good fit. And they loved that because I'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
you, I don't think we can help you. We're
Right.
not the right solution for you, or things like that. And that is a part of active listening as well, as being understanding how to tell people as well when you're not a good fit.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because if you truly understand their
Mhm.
problem, then you should be able to truly understand whether your solution will be the best fit or not. And
Yeah,
and it's not always the case. And there are cases where you could squeeze it in, right? You could make it work.
right.
You could figure it out, You could wear the pants that are a little too tight, right? You're not going to be comfortable all day, but they're going to work. They're going to cover the parts that you need to cover. They're going to solve the main problem, which is it's illegal to be naked, so you're no longer naked, but you're not really comfortable. It's not really working for you the way that it could.
Right.
If you were wearing a pair of pants that fit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
Cate,
definitely.
let's talk a little bit about how has active listening helped you in your career? We've talked a little bit about this, but I want to maybe dig a little bit more in specific things of how active listening has actually helped you.
Yeah, I definitely. So active listening, I think has definitely helped me in my sales positions and management positions. So being able to establish a rapport fairly fast with a person has huge benefits. So that's essentially one of the main things that my active listening does for me. It's a connection. So when I'm actively listening to, let's say, a new prospect on the phone, and they can tell that I am listening, I'm understanding, I'm validating, that leads to trust. That may not, this is not like, we're going to get married type of trust, but we're going to date for a little bit. We're going to take the first steps because I can tell that you actually care, that I'm not just talking to talk, I'm talking to be heard and understood.
Mm-hmm.
And so from a client's perspective, that feels a little safer, a little more comfortable than talking to the next salesperson who just kind of wants to get their story out, right?
Yeah.
So it's differentiated me in my sales career. So I've always been able to kind of, when I'm in a sales organization, rise to the top because I really focus on this. I don't focus on selling. I focus on listening. So if I really understand and we are fully aligned, and then I have a solution that can actually meet the needs, my work is done. There's not much more that I need to do. My case is proven at that point, right? But I don't get there if I don't really understand it. So it starts at the very beginning, and that's how it's helped my career.
Yeah, and you're talking a little bit on the sales side, which for me is, I think, easier because you're already engaged with that particular client and they're already saying that they want something to help you. What I'm curious about is with your cold calling, how has active listening helped you there? Because these are individuals that a lot of times don't want to talk to you. But I think this also goes into the persuasion, which isn't really the topic, but for me really is, because it's through your active listening that you have been able to engage people and persuade them also to have further conversations. And one of the things that I love is that when you bring a opportunity to us, it's well vetted. It's not like well, would you like a meeting, to be able to talk to our person? Like, you've had an active conversation where you're outlining all of the challenges and all the different things. So I'm curious to understand more about how you do it on the cold calling side of someone that doesn't want to talk to you.
Yes. So it starts from the very first thing you say when you're cold calling, to show you're listening. So the very first thing to do is to figure out a way to humanize the experience. They weren't expecting you to call, and you have a goal in mind, right? And to not hide that. So I've always trained people that it's so much more comfortable if everyone is on the same page from the very beginning. So like there are times when I've had to say like, hey, I'm sure you were just, sitting around waiting for me to cold call you today, right? And people be like, yes, yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. Right. Yeah. Yeah. You probably don't even have a job, right? Like there's nothing to do. You just get paid to sit there and wait for me, you know? And so I've done things like that, but you figure out the way to humanize it, and that doesn't always feel comfortable for some people, but you have to acknowledge in your mind that this is uncomfortable, it is awkward, and we don't have to pretend it's not. The most key thing with that you then say while you keep that in your mind is that you ask for engagement. So I think one of the huge mistakes that a lot of cold callers make is that they just start talking. They think, okay, I've got maybe 30 seconds to get my statement out, and if they hear something so valuable and so interesting in those 30 seconds, they're going to be willing to talk to me. And the truth is that they don't believe anything you're saying anyway. They have no reason to believe that, right? You're a stranger that just called them, out of the blue. And, even if you were calling from a really well-respected business, you still, they don't know you from Adam. So right. You have to ask if this is an okay time, if they are willing to speak with you, and so I really focus on coming across very directly. I'm calling to try to eventually sell you this, or to talk to you about this. Is this an okay time? Are you open for that? Do you have space for that right now? And then you got to listen, because if they say no, you got to respect it. But a lot of times people will actually be like, you know what? Sure. I'll give you a couple minutes. So it starts from the very beginning, from establishing the fact that you know what your role is, and you know what their role is, and they're in power. They have the power in that moment, and you have to request some of their space. Okay.
Yeah. I love that. I get cold called a lot, and I always try to give them an opportunity. And the moment they don't listen to me is the moment I shut down.
Right.
And I had someone the other day, I ended up telling them at the end, I was like, I just wanted you to know you did an excellent job. And I'm like, I don't normally get to this point where I'm like setting up the meeting. But it was because he listened to me and he was responding to what it is that I was saying. So that's how a relationship starts. I think the key thing you said is trust. Like, I don't know you from Adam. I've got to build a rapport with you, let you know I'm listening to you and respecting the things that you say. So if you say, this isn't a good time right now, I'm saying, I understand. Could I call you back at a particular time when it might be a better time? And then you're risking, trying. But most people are like, okay, but I got you on the phone call. I need to spiel all the crap out to you. And that doesn't help to build a rapport. And that's ultimately what it is the trust, the building of rapport, because you're listening.
Right. And then if this is especially helpful if you know the people you're calling are in your target market. There's some times where it's like so cold you don't really know yet.
Right.
And this next tip that I'm going to give you is useful in all situations. But it's especially important if you want to call that person back another time. So when they tell you, a lot of times they'll tell you exactly what they're dealing with, so like, they'll be like, no, I'm down one person in my group. We're just super packed, and then instead of being like, just focus on your priority, like, okay, I'll call you another time. That is what they want to hear. But it takes only a couple more seconds to be like, oh man, I know how that feels. You're right. Like, can I call you back? Like, should I give you 3 months? Like, what do you think will work? What do you think is going to be better? And
yes.
And good luck, hang in there. This is tough, and a little bit of validating and a little bit of actual genuine care for what the person just said, why they're too busy to talk to you.
I love that because you will also put notes in there. You're like, the last time
Yes.
I spoke to this person, this was going on in their life. And so then
Yep.
you mention it. You're like, hey, last time I spoke to you, you had COVID. Last time I spoke to you, you had, this going on in your life. And so you mention those things because you listened, you wrote down,
Yep.
and you're also using that information to continue to build rapport with that person to let them know that they're a human, that you care
Right.
about them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like because I get how it is to have those things happen in your career, and I learn all sorts of interesting things because people will drop those little tidbits.
Yeah.
Like somebody will say like, well, I'm about to walk into a board meeting, I can't talk, or like, no problem, have a great meeting, I'll call you back next week.
Yeah.
And then when I do call them back, I say, how was that board meeting? Was it good? Or you were late for that board meeting. Did anyone notice? Like whatever, because people will say those types of things. I've had people say like, I'm literally, we're buying our first house. I got married 2 months ago and we're buying our first house. I'm walking into the closing, I'm going to have to talk to you some other time.
Yeah.
I'm for sure going to mention that when I call them back. Like,
Yeah.
how was that closing? How's the house? And it just, it makes people feel more comfortable. I enjoy it. I'm not, that's the other thing about the curiosity, right? Like, so these are great tactics if you literally want to check some boxes and be like, okay, this is a tactic on how to build rapport.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really like, it's about connection, and it's about trust,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about caring, like really actually caring about other humans,
Right.
from a deeper perspective. So I would advise you to, there's some elements of, learning the tactics and kind of faking it until you make it. But the goal is to actually care, is to actually care a little bit. Yeah. Like this person is across the country. I don't really know much about them, but, they told me their daughter was sick and I couldn't, I know what that's like. I have a daughter. I know what it's like when she gets sick, so the next time I talk to them, I'm going to say, I hope your daughter's doing better. How's it
Yeah.
going?
Right. I love
Yeah,
that.
because, yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to post something Carrie said. So there are times when speaking to a client where I've said, we could do this for you, but I think another firm could be a better fit for you. I'm happy to refer you to them and make an introduction, which they've appreciated. And now they trust us and bring us other projects. Exactly.
Yeah, right. It works well for both, the other firm. It works well for the client.
Yeah.
Everyone's happy. I always say this too. I say, because I'm a big fan of saying no to clients,
Mm-hmm.
only because if it's not a fit, it's in no one's best interest. And I will often say this, you know what? At the end of the day, we don't want you to be at all dissatisfied, because that ends up being more work for us,
Right.
and you're not happy. And we would rather this be a relationship where everyone is happy. You're happy to pay your invoice, because you got value out of it, and we were happy to do the work and solve the problems. And and it's just a mutually dependent, happy situation, right?
Yeah.
And when you say things like that in just plain English, people understand it. That makes sense. They can relate to that,
Yeah.
right? But if
Yeah.
if you're beating around the bush, or you're really there for one goal only, you may end up winning the deal, but you might not end up with a loyal customer down at the end.
I think for me, that is the biggest thing that I have also learned over the years is saying no is super powerful, and realizing that someone isn't a good fit is super powerful. And the reason I think it's even more powerful is that a lot of times in a sales industry, people are like, get the sale, here's your quota, here's your
Mm-hmm.
quota. And we don't have quotas for
Right.
our people.
Right.
And it is complete opposite of almost every single company out there. We have goals, We have goals as a company. We have goals of the different things of what we think based on trends, based on all of these different things that we take a look at. And the past several years, we have not only hit our goal, but we've exceeded it. And for me, that really says a lot. And it's because I think we've become known as a company that really wants to understand what's going on with your business and to identify if it's a good fit for you and a good fit for us. And then therefore, we're also not dealing with all the extra crap that comes afterwards. Okay, well, this wasn't what I was expecting, because most of the people that come to us, even from some of the other people in industry, it's because they were told, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. And then they weren't able to do it. And we're
Right.
upfront, like, here's the stipulations. Here's what we can do. Here's what we can't do. You decide
Right.
whether this is a good fit or not for you. And I think that serves you well, because then you're not dealing with all the bullshit on the end of the project or during the project of trying to then resolve all of the issues because you weren't in alignment.
Yes, right. And it's so much harder then to try to fix all the things that shouldn't have been fixed to begin with, because there wasn't a good fit there, right?
Exactly.
So it becomes much harder at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, Cate. So what are some reasons that some of us might struggle with being an active listener?
I think sometimes people don't have, I think there's a few reasons. And one of the ones that I think is actually something that people could incorporate immediately is to learn ways to active listen. Like, if your goal is to be an active listener and you're struggling to execute that. So it goes back to, you want to focus, but you are unable to. This is where some of the tactics, like, I talked a little bit earlier about checking off a box, but this is where some of the tactics can actually, I think, help you. So one of the tactics that I use a lot and teach a lot with active listening is for you to hear it in their language rather than your language. Okay. So every company comes to the table with their own terms, with their own language. They describe things a certain way. They call things a certain way. And every person comes to the table with those things. When you are in a conversation and you are curious to learn their language, the way they describe it, it forces you to be a little more focused. Right. If you're actually looking for the way that they describe this particular problem and the language they use, and you do so with the intent of repeating it. So what I heard is this. And my perception is that this is how I would solve it, or this is how I would refer to that. Does that feel accurate to you? So I feel like for people that are struggling with active listening, if they have some of those little tactics that they can rely on, that they might end up being able to do it a little bit more easier the next time, I guess I would say.
Yeah. So what I heard
because when people say they want to become active listening, it's just an ability thing at that point. There are some people that truly don't give a shit. There are people out there that are like, I don't care. They may not say that, but they really don't give a shit. They know that they know what they want to say. They're there to hear and to get their point across. Right.
Yeah. Right. So what I heard you say is that to say what I heard you say and repeat back some of the things that they said, but also to say it in their language. And so as an example, a lot of times we will ask clients, do you have a work breakdown structure? Which is basically, do you have a project? Do you have a phase? Do you have a task? And they're like, yeah, but we don't call it that. we call it, task is a phase. So then you have to
Mhm.
start speaking in their language. Same thing with all kinds of different types of terms. They might call it jobs versus projects, or they have particular type of leaders. That's not division leaders, it's discipline leaders, or all of those
Mhm.
types of things. So for me, I write those things down. Okay, they're talking about discipline leaders equals this, basically. So I'm almost translating to my own language, but then using their language. Um,
Yep.
and so it was the what I heard, doing it in their language. Um, was there something else there?
And then if you need to fit it into a box so that you are both aligned and you're talking about the same thing, then you need
Mhm.
to get their alignment. Like, so this is how I understood it. This is the language you
Oh,
used. Now
yes.
you know I'm listening. Now are we aligned on on how we're going to solve this, or what we're going to call this issue, or what we're going to call the solution? Is there alignment?
So you're re-outlining it and then asking them also how does that feel? Is that feel appropriate? Does that seem like the right approach?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
I have to say
Exactly.
that I think we go through a training called the Great Demo, and
Mm-hmm.
they do this as well. And I didn't until this moment just connect the two, because at the end of we do what's called a situation slide. We do
Mm-hmm.
what we heard was, and we outline each of the things of what we heard, and then we say, is that correct? And then we
Mm-hmm.
allow them to respond. And then we also say, has anything changed? So we're actively listening. Is there something additional? But along the way, we're also saying, you said, where it's
Mm-hmm.
not what we said, because we're not owning the solution. It's your problem, it's your challenge, and it's your solution to this. And so I just ended up sort of correlating the two as we were talking.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I dug it so much. That's why I was so into it, because it's like at its base, it's all about active listening.
It really
The
is.
great demo
Yeah.
approach. Yeah, it really is.
I love that.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
Well, I want to see if anybody has any questions. Like, do you have any questions for Cate? Is there anything a part of what Cate said that stood out to you that you think, oh, that was an aha moment for me? And so for me, I just had an aha moment with what it is that we just talked about. And so while we're waiting to see if we have any questions that have come in, I also just want to let people know that next week we're going to be talking
Mhm.
about manifesting. And for me, this is a really amazing topic that I think a lot of
Mhm.
people don't realize the power that we have within us. And Cate and I were exchanging a little bit about this particular topic, but I'm looking forward to next week's topic to talk about manifesting.
Yes. Yeah, me too. I really am. And manifesting is so cool because um it can be everywhere if you're looking for it, right?
Hmm.
Like you can really do this with the simplest things or the biggest things. I
Yeah.
feel like my dad just did this. He was talking to me for the past few weeks, past few months. He had this really big volunteer commitment. He was very engaged in his Rotary Club and had a larger responsibility regionally, and it was taking up a lot of his time. And it was really a good thing for him, I think, between my mom dying and now, he needed something to kind of take up a lot of his time and
Yeah.
his energy and focus, right? So I think, but when he ended that position, and then was just kind of back to his part-time job and his hobbies, he realized, you know what? I really like these hobbies.
Yeah.
and and so he's been talking about, like maybe I do want to like retire more, like I semi-retired a few years ago. Now I'm thinking maybe I want to do a little more. but I just don't think I can. I don't think I can maintain my lifestyle. I don't think I can, have these other things like, like I really like my season symphony tickets. I don't want to give that up, I love my house. Yeah, I don't need it. It's 4-bedroom, big house, I don't need, but I love it. I still want my house. There are other things that he would potentially have to change. But we just had a few conversations about it like over the past couple months. And then all of a sudden yesterday, he's like, you know what? I figured it out. and then things just kind of all happened and he figured it out. And I was like, Dad, you totally manifested this. And he's like, yeah, I did. Mom would be so proud, right? I totally manifested this.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. And he figured out, what he can do and what is going to make him happy. And he wants to keep working. He just wants to go back to a totally different thing that he did years ago, and that shouldn't give him enough income, in addition to retirement funds to like maintain the lifestyle that he has. But that wasn't in his mind, He had to like spend time manifesting that.
Yeah. All right, we'll jump into that more next week.
Yes.
And then the following week, I want to just let everybody know that we're going to have a guest speaker. We're going to have Jesse Hernandez joining us. He is a part of the No BS Tribe, the Learning Missteps podcast, and Emotional Bungee Jumpers. He's a part of several different groups that I've actually been getting more into, and I just really love their group. Their group is also very much about being human and treating people as humans, but we're going to have him talking to us about missteps. And he has a book coming out, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. Or actually, it's already out, and so we'll talk about missteps and mistakes and the journey of some of the things that he's gone through and overcoming those things. And then the following week, we'll then be talking about confidence. And so I say, hell yeah.
Yes. Well, yeah. Yeah, we've got some great things coming up. I'm super excited about it.
Yeah. And so, well, Cate, I just loved this conversation today in just I learned some things as well. And so I appreciate you sharing with us your wisdom, your knowledge that you have learned over the years. I think the cold calling has really is an amazing capability that not everybody can do, but for me, you just narrowed it down quite a bit to be able to understand how it's really not rocket science. It's just connecting with people, and I love that.
Yeah. That's all it is.
And so we do have a Facebook user. We'll end with you. Thank you. Be sure to go to streamyard.com/Facebook. Let us know. But she said, thank you too. As always, I appreciate you too so much. And then Cate says, Cate, you're a great resource for active listening.
Aw, thanks, Steph.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, let me know. And let me know if you have any other questions. I have more tips and tricks that I could have brought up, but we certainly, like all of our topics, we have a lot to talk about. And then the conversation just has a spirit of its own, and we have to follow it and love it as it goes along. It's a little journey here.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Cate. And we will see everybody next week on Friday, same time, same location. Yes. And so thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to next week. And Cate, they want to do what for their Friday?
They let this fuel your Friday, friends, badasses, fellow badasses out there. Fuel your Friday. Have a kick-ass weekend. Take this energy into next week. And we will see you next Friday and talk about all the awesome things you're going to manifest.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Take care.